With the Tarkov wipe imminent, a lot has changed that will dramatically affect the start of this next new patch, and some of these changes you can prepare for right now, which we'll see later in the video. The first change that most people will notice immediately on the next wipe is the removal of global limits. One of the most basic quests, handing in 2 MP133 shotguns to Prapor, is usually done by unlocking Jaeger and then buying them from him. In the past though, if you weren't fast at getting 2 Jaeger, you were basically out of luck, because they would sell out instantly on the trader refresh until a few days into the next patch, by which point you probably didn't need them anymore. Now, of course, you can unlock Jaeger at your leisure, because the 2 shotguns will always be there given your personal limit of 6. There used to be quite a few items that this caused problems for on day 1. A good example is the MP5, which I have avoided using early wipe before because, like the 133s, the rail for attaching the sights was borderline impossible to buy. More generally, this will also help with Gunsmith. Not all of the tasks allow you to buy items directly from the traders, but those that do, again, were always sold out, whereas now you will at least be able to buy your allocation. Something that will make a difference here is whether BSG introduces a solution to trader flipping. If they don't, and they leave it how it is now, Gunsmith is going to be pretty easy because people who have reached the required trader level or have completed the task to unlock the specific items, as is often the way with Gunsmith, they will be able to flip the items from the trader back onto the flea market to allow other people to complete the task, who will then be able to buy the items themselves to flip, and so on until the price comes down dramatically. Speaking of the flea market more generally, we have to remember that this is going to be the first wipe where Find and Raid is not going to be a requirement to put items up on the flea market for many years. One of the biggest impacts that I can think of for this is keys. These were always very scarce in the early wipe because of the low drop rate, combined with the fact that once you had used it in Raid yourself, you were not able to resell it to anybody else, or even drop it for your friends, which was very limiting. Now though, you're going to be able to put up, for example, the Tarkov Director's Office key for one of the early quests in Big Red, where once you've got 39 out of 40 uses, somebody else can use it and then resell it themselves for 38 out of 40. This will dramatically increase the supply of keys in the player base overall, and should gatekeep people much less once they reach level 15 to unlock the Flea. Another interesting ramification of the open flea market without any trader flipping protection is going to be the ease at which cash spent with the traders is acquired. You would be able to buy items from the trader and list them again on the flea market for 1 ruble or $1 less for other players to buy, increasing your cash spend with that specific trader, but without really costing you any money. Of course, if BSG do put in a solution to prevent trader flipping, whether it be the full not for resale system that I have suggested in the past, or a halfway house band-aid, i.e. a simple item flag that gets removed on entry into a raid, then you won't be able to do this quite as easily. But we'll have to see the exact mechanics, if they do arrive at all, to figure out what the best strategy will be. One fun element of this, well, to a certain subset of players at least, is the ability to invest in specific items, kind of like a stock market of sorts. The GPU trade is fairly obvious because they are cheap early on and they always get expensive later, but as you needed them for your own Bitcoin farm anyway, it was always worth doing even with Find and Raid on. Now though, you're able to buy any item that you want and then relist it at a later date. Think sugar, water filters, tier 3 hideout upgrades, that kind of thing. This obviously comes with an opportunity cost because you are spending money on resources that you aren't going to use right away. These could instead be used on your hideout upgrades right now, or on the gear that you're using in the early wipe, which is arguably more important, so it's up to you what you do here. There will also be opportunities to buy and sell items on the flea market more dynamically too. For example, weapons that players haven't completely disassembled but are worth more individually than they are together. These are often things like RK3 grips on Saiga 12s, Bastion covers on AKs of various varieties, and AK-style butt pads not taken off the stocks. You don't see much of this going on right now because the player base is pretty much flush with money. These additions came quite late in the current wipe, so we're actually yet to see their effects on the early game. Now, in terms of actually getting to the flea market, because clearly the level 15 barrier will still be a very important milestone in every player's progress, we have the issue of Arena. It has been documented by a few people, and in particular Nice Guy, that with a couple of hours worth of Arena, you can reach level 15 and potentially access the flea market much more quickly than those players who are actually playing the base game Escape from Tarkov. The ramifications of this are quite hard to predict, and that's assuming that BSG don't even change the EXP game. Arena players will probably have access to the flea market earlier than regular Escape from Tarkov players, but once they get there, they won't have any items to actually sell. They will have some money from playing their arena matches, but because they'll be the only people at level 15 in under 10 hours of the new wipe opening, the items that are on the flea market are likely to be very, very expensive. I'm actually not 100% sure what is optimal here in terms of progression, and it probably depends on what your priorities are. Lots of rubles, max traders as fast as possible, max hideout, this is going to determine which route you take. As for the trader ref, although the first quest to unlock him at level 1 is pretty straightforward, nothing that he has there is that amazing. Level 2 is really where he starts to get interesting, with class 4 armor and SR25s equipped with 3x optics, but even the first quest for him is quite hard to do, in particular the Pevco beer to hand in. Getting 7 of these early in the wipe is just not that likely, and most people have completed this one through the craft. At nutrition level 3 though, this isn't going to happen early on. So even with EOD and the 0.2 rep boost, you'll have to find 0.05 rep somewhere else. Granted, that might be doable fairly quickly with daily tasks in Arena, but without the ability to reroll them a bunch of times, which often costs upwards of 1,000,000 rubles to get ones that are actually achievable, this is also easier said than done. It's also obviously not exclusively one or the other. You can mix and match some Arena between playing regular Escape from Tarkov if you need a little boost to levels to unlock some extra quests. I'm not really planning on playing that much Arena early on, as I'd rather get task progression over money, but one massive advantage of having Arena available comes with the med station later on. Every single wipe I document my progress of not actually getting shot that much because of my playstyle, and when it comes to upgrading the med station, I never have the level of vitality required to do so. Now with Arena, this is not a problem, and you'll get to Vitality 3 extremely quickly without having to go and visit the barbed wire and shoreline for 5 raids to patch yourself up. Another element that is going to be vastly different this wipe is the armor and ammunition situation. The one unknown that we can't control for right now is what BSG is going to do to the ammo balance. This was shifted much later in the progression, presumably because of the changes that they made to the armor plate system this wipe. So now that armor is completely different to 6 months ago, they may revert some of these changes and bring various cartridges back down the trader levels to compensate. Either way, the dramatic buff that armor has been given is certainly going to make SMGs less viable in the early wipe, when assault rifles and DMRs are probably a little bit more preferable. You're still going to be able to get headshots with SMGs of course, but if you're fighting at anything outside of close-ish range where you're relying on sprays of bullets to penetrate armor and kill opponents that way, they are very likely to feel extremely underwhelming. This is especially true for weapons that rely on 20 pen ammo early on. With the speed at which players tend to upgrade their armor, I wouldn't want to be going into raid on the 2nd or 3rd day without at least 30 pen ammo if I can help it. As a USEC, you can probably use your M855 that you get at the start to relatively good effect, and it's even passable against class 4 with a 4 or 5 hit kill. This is going to be closely equivalent to a cartridge like 545 PS for Bear, although some of you might look to farm T45 and 762 PS from Scavs to use that instead, given that it packs a much greater punch. In terms of your own protection, you're going to want to try to find class 4 armor as soon as you physically can. Outside of Scavs in Raid, this is primarily available on Ragman 2, and any of them will give you a large improvement in survivability in combat. Contrary to what I have been talking about recently, you probably do want an armor with neck protection, because in the early wipe, this is the only time that it's going to save you. Expect to see a lot of Juk 3 press armors, and in particular cuirassas, as you'll be able to buy class 4 western plates for this off the flea market. An interesting quirk of the armor system is that the meta armors that we're using at the moment that have soft armor that follow the plate, none of these have the ability to protect the neck. There is not a single one that protects the neck and also has soft armor following the plate. This means that early on, the greater soft protection coverage armors are going to be better, and this is going to transition back over to the old meta style again once people are using high pen rounds once more. Speculating again about Arena, the fact that you can't do any of Ragman's questline until level 17 is actually a big benefit to boosting your levels early. Starting the wipe with access to class 4 armors from the trader is pretty huge. Or at least you would think so, until you realise that pretty much all of them are locked behind interchange and streets quests now, which you're going to have to complete first to actually buy them, despite having the trader level. This is why I said it wasn't so easy. At the beginning of this video, I said that you can prepare for some of these changes right now, and using the new wishlist feature, we actually can. BSG have said that the wishlist is not going to be cleared when the wipe happens, which means that we can set it up beforehand to make it as easy as possible when wipe day does come. Favorited crafts and current hideout upgrades can be set to wishlist automatically in the settings, but early task items, including keys, hideout upgrades one step later, crafts not currently available to you, and barters will all need to be set manually. For regular quests, you can go to the wiki quest page and look up the items that are listed in green on this great picture. Obviously, the most important ones are things like Salewa and gas analyzers that you'll need right at the start, and then some slightly more obscure ones that you need for later, like PM pistols for Prapor or fuel conditioners for Ragman can come in really handy. I'm sure we've all forgotten to save one item or another for later quests, and this should help alleviate some of the heartache. If you don't have an item to hand, remember that you can just go through the handbook to wishlist it in there if you don't actually have a copy or there isn't one on the Flea. Gunsmith is then another separate set of items, and currently I'd be looking for a hard drive to barter for the MP133 rail right at the beginning, 545 AK-60 round mags, where non-Find & Raid does work because Find & Raid versions are needed for Prapor's actual quests, a 7.62 hexagon or Zenit DTK suppressor, a Fortis Shift foregrip, a 556 60 round mag of either type, even more 60 round 545 AK mags, a Steiner Laztac 2 flashlight, an LAB PEQ tactical device, a TAN EOTech EXPS3 hollow sight, a CNC Warrior 556 muzzle adapter, a Magpul AFG tactical foregrip in olive drab specifically, a Zenit Klesh 2U tactical flashlight, an AK Magpul MOE pistol grip in black in particular, an EOTech HHS-1 hybrid sight also in black, an AR-15 Alexander Arms Mark 10 rifle length handguard, and the Alexander Arms 10-inch rail that fits to it. These are basically all the ones that are kind of high-ish on the trader levels by the time you get there, and after this, you probably have the levels and the cash to do the rest relatively easily. This is also assuming that there are no changes to the builds, which there very well could be. As for hideout upgrades, you'll need to start looking for the next set of things right away. Important early upgrades are Lavatory 2, Security 2, Generator 2, Heating 2, and Illumination 2, but not Vents 2, as you can upgrade Vents Level 1 immediately simply with cash at the start, and that will add the Vents Level 2 items automatically to the wishlist. For the others then, we'll need a Keck tape, 3 hoses, 5 screws, a drill and a sewing kit for the Lavatory 2, a WD-40, an Elite pliers and a TNT brick for Security 2, a Bulbex cutter, 5 relays, a motor and 15 wires for Generator 2, 3 dry fuel, 2 hunting matches and 3 cricket lighters for Heating 2, and 14 light bulbs and 10 wires for Illumination 2. Crafting kind of depends on what you want to do for those crafts that you don't have available at the moment, but you want to do them later once the module has upgraded. But for example, keeping car first aid kits is something that I do until I've done Therapist's Soleil request, because this allows you to make them in the hideout if you get terrible luck finding them in the raid. So what else should we be looking forward to? As per the roadmap, we have a relatively vague list of things, with the most eye-catching probably being FPS optimization on all locations, as we've been waiting for this one for ages. Of course, Nikita has been much more vocal on Tarkov TV in May, with one of the most important elements to look forward to being the new kit module in the hideout that allows you to swap and build loadouts quickly using mannequins. We should also be getting bipods and stabilizing weapons on cover to reduce recoil, and tripwires and mines, including trapping bodies and containers, along with a new boss who uses them. A few other things that were mentioned include improved grenade and tactical device mode selection, and maybe the smooth zooming of scopes, although this one wasn't for sure coming with the wipe. Lastly, the map-to-map travel event should come in August as well with the patch, which sounds like some kind of special mode alongside the ordinary game, but we'll have to see this one pans out. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of other changes as well that we haven't seen yet and haven't been spoken about, but hopefully you now feel at least ready for the next wipe. As usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.